All right, so we're going to go over all of these topics this morning. How to protect your business accounts, your information and identifiers, make sure you're regularly reviewing your credit file, your computers and networks, and then what to do of how to inform your staff and what to do if something bad does happen and your information is compromised. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with protecting your business accounts. So first of all, the primary goal of most scammers is to make money. This is their job. This is what they're out to do, is to get your personal information and to get your finances. Usually they aren't just out to tarnish your name and reputation, but that can also be a side effect of identity theft. One of the best places to start is to protect your business's identity by looking at where your money is stored, which is your bank. So first of all, do you know your bank's policies on all of your accounts? These are not questions that I typically think of when I'm setting up an account, and as a business person, if you don't actively know the answers to these questions, or if you are maybe the office manager, the admin person, the person who's responsible, do you also, or do they know the answers to these questions? What is the reporting time frame for possible fraud? Commercial business accounts tend to have a shorter time frame to report suspicious activity than a personal or consumer account. So be aware of this and ask this question of how long do you have to report before maybe a different liability comes into place. What are the standard protections on your current accounts? Just like the reporting time frame, it may not be the same protection that your consumer accounts do, maybe your personal checking or your credit card. So even if you're familiar with those, you should double check on your business accounts as well. What's the liability for fraudulent transactions? What would you be responsible for if somebody compromised your accounts and you had financial loss? Would you be responsible for it? Would the bank? And what actions would need to be taken when suspicious activity is detected in order to move through it and try to rectify the situation? Keep your checking account supplies secure. Again, in a small office or a small business, you need to make sure that you do have locking cabinets and or locking doors in places that you store information. Even your extra checkbooks, deposit sheets, your endorsement stamps, all of that information, it has value. And so not only does identity theft happen with people out in the world electronically and from far away, but it can also happen with people that work for you, that come into your office and that you know. So make sure that you're taking those precautions in-house as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about wire and electronic transfers, because it is one easy way for criminals to get immediate cash. I've always used the analogy that wire transfers are kind of like delivering cash to a stranger in a suitcase. That when you are using an ACH transfer or a wire transfer with any other organization, it's like putting all that cash in a suitcase, sending it to somebody, dropping it off, and as soon as they grab that suitcase and run, you've lost that money. It's gone. So there's a couple things that you can research with your business or with your bank. Possibly implementing dual controls, requiring two parties to approve outgoing transfers, including the originator and a separate authenticator. And if you don't use wire transfers at all with your bank, talk to your bank about blocking, filtering, or limiting all of those wire transfers to avoid this altogether. And then any other transfers, you can ask for multi-factor authentication. So making sure that there's approval from multiple people, maybe via email or phone or text. So ask your bank what functionality they have and if you can put these into place. Monitor your business accounts daily. This should be happening in your personal and professional worlds. Reviewing and reconciling all transactions. It should be part of your daily routine or weekly at best, to make sure that there's nothing out of place or doesn't look familiar, that you don't know where it came from. You know, the old adage of balancing the checkbook doesn't look the same way that it used to, and so, but reconciling all of those transactions, knowing where they came from and if you initiated them is extremely important. It's very common for a scammer to make a really small transaction, $5 to $10 maybe, to see if it would go unnoticed, and also it's checking to make sure it's a viable account, that it is still open, that it's working, and that there's money available. So even look for those little ones that you're not familiar with and challenge anything that you're not responsible for. We encourage online banking so that you can be as informed as possible. If you're waiting for a monthly paper statement to reconcile your account, you are giving a lot more opportunity for if something has been compromised to not know about it and have a more difficult time fixing it. So if you're online on a more regular basis, you will be able to catch something quicker and hopefully keep financial loss from happening. There's also the option with your banks most likely to have email or text alerts for odd activity or if your balance gets below something. So make sure that you're knowing all the functionality and using it. And then when it comes to those paper statements, that has a lot of valuable information. It may have your full account number printed on them. It has all of your transactions on there. And so if you can get them online and download them as needed, by having them come to you via mail, one, if your mail gets stolen or lost, that is very, very sensitive information. And secondly, where does your mail go through in your office before it actually gets to the right person? So it just gives the opportunity for someone to possibly take that information. And then since we are encouraging you to be online to do your banking, there are ways to make it as safe as possible when it comes to your business. Scammers are always trying to be one step ahead, and when it comes to viruses and malware and spy bots and all of these crazy things that I honestly can't even wrap my head around, you need to make sure that you are doing it as safe as possible. And one way to do that is to dedicate one computer to access your online banking activity. And that's kind of difficult. When you think about your business day and your business dealings, you do your email on probably every computer in your company. You might do your shopping online during your lunch break or something like that. But when you're doing those things, surfing the web, downloading attachments, using your social media accounts, you're exposing the opportunity to get one of those viruses on your computer, whether it's clicking a bad link, downloading an attachment you didn't mean to, whatever it may be. So if you have one computer that accesses online banking and it does nothing else, that is a major safety precaution that then there's a less likelihood that one of those viruses ends up on there. You can also consider reducing the ability for your employees to have access to sites on computers. I know in the banking industry, for example, they have very low access to a lot of websites that could possibly pose a potential risk because of the sensitivity of their industry. So think of that as well if your employees, if you want to reduce them to not be able to get on Facebook or not be able to online shop, whatever it may be, in your entire network. And then passwords. Passwords need to be complicated, and luckily a lot of the sites that we have accounts with, they are going to require these things, having 6+ characters, upper and lowercase numbers and characters. So it gets so difficult to memorize them, and you don't want to write them down on a piece of paper because if somebody steals that piece of paper, they have access to everything. So we do recommend having a different password for different accounts so that if somebody guesses one or one gets hacked, you don't get everything hacked all at once. And so one possible way to do that is to write a sentence. I learned this in actually a management information systems class when I was in college, and write out a sentence. For example, I like to go to the store. And you use the first letter of each of those words, and you can replace the word to with the number 2, and then just use an exclamation point at the end or a period at the end so you have a special character. And it's something that would be difficult to guess. It looks random. It fulfills all the needs of most password requirements. And then if you wrote down your sentence, nobody would know that that meant your password. So it's just one thing to consider as you start changing passwords, and you should change them on a semi-regular basis every handful of months so that you aren't increasing the possibility that a scammer would get access to it. All right, so the next topic of how to protect your business from identity theft is to protect your business information and identifiers. And this is very similar to the same recommendations we'd make for a person, but treat your EIN number like your Social Security number. It is unique to your business and your identity, And so if somebody has your business name, the owner's name, address, and the EIN number, it's all the puzzle pieces that make it possible to possibly open new accounts in your business name. So treat your EIN number like your Social Security. Ask why it is required and only provide it to sources that you are 100% sure who they are. So if you were sent a form, if you're applying for something, if somebody is calling you, the question is, did you initiate the contact? So are you familiar with who it is? Have you confirmed who that agency or person who is asking is? And if you can't say yes to those things, you shouldn't provide it up front. You should be doing more investigation into who's asking for it. Keeping your documents in a safe, secure location. Again, using those locked file cabinets, and make sure there isn't a lot of people who have accessibility to it. So for example, we have a key box with all of the keys to the locking boxes and areas in our office that are sensitive, and then we even limited to only 2 or 3 people who have access to that key box. So every layer that you can put in to reduce access to sensitive information is extremely important. And then shredding your old and unnecessary business documents. You know, it's difficult because there's so many requirements for how long you keep your information as a business, old tax documents and forms and contracts and all of that stuff, but eventually it isn't needed. So make sure that you check out their retention schedule for how long you need to keep those documents, and as soon as you can, make sure that you're moving out the oldest stuff on a regular basis, every year or so. Get it shredded. Make sure that even old receipts, registrations, account numbers, it is not easily accessible, and it should be in a locked, secure room as well when it's not being needed. Regularly review your business registration. I mean, you should be renewing this every year anyways, but it is important to keep your eye on the registration information and make sure that it's up to date. Scammers may try to change the names of people on your business registration, or even try to reopen old business registrations. So if you have an old business that you've closed maybe 3 or 4 years ago, make sure that you check and make sure that it is still dormant and that it hasn't been reopened in somebody else's name, or possibly in your name that you didn't know about it because they would want you to have the negative impacts of what they do with it. So visit the Secretary of State Corporations Division and just look up your business on a periodic basis. File your annual reports and renewals on time, because if your licensing and registration is inactive or suspended or in default, scammers may assume that this business isn't keeping up with their quarterly or annual business filings and wouldn't realize or wouldn't notice if things had been changed. So make sure you keep an eye on that. Maintain an inventory of your accounts. This is so important in your personal and business worlds. Make a list of all of the business accounts, creditors, account and credit card numbers, key contact information for billing and fraud departments, because if something bad happens, let's say your business checking and savings accounts are compromised, my guess is that you probably have a lot of places where you have automatic payments or automatic withdrawals that you use for, and you need to be able to contact all of the other people to let them know that you've had fraudulent behavior happen, so you need to let them know to also put an alert on their accounts. And trying to compile all of that information is a really big pain, especially when you're in a stressful situation. So keep a contact list of all of that information. Who are all of your vendors? Who do you have regular automatic payments with already? What are those accounts? Your credit report for your business is also a place where you can keep that contact or your account information. But you might want to go one step further with the customer service phone numbers to make it easy in case something bad happens. Okay, so protecting and regularly reviewing your business credit file. We recommend on the personal level as well to always check your credit report, at least annually, if not even more often than that, to make sure that you're spotting if something fishy is showing up on there so you can report it before it gets worse. So by keeping your eye on it, you'll be able to notice if anything awry has shown up. Keep your business and personal finances separate. Avoid using your personal credit cards, accounts, and lines of credit for business. In fact, most financial institutions and major credit card issuers, they specifically exclude business-related transactions that are conducted with personal cards from their zero fraud liability programs. So again, this comes back around to, do you know your bank's policies, and do you know the fraud protection that is available to you with your business accounts and cards? And then review your business credit reports. You can get copies of these from the following organizations, the ones that are on your screen, to make sure that you're noticing suspicious activity and make sure that all the information is accurate. You know, even if you've moved your business, if you've had a change in ownership, that information you also want to be accurate, because you don't want information from old accounts that are still active and viable going to the wrong place. So make sure all that information is accurate. All of these organizations also offer fee-based services to monitor your business credit file and alert if changes have happened. Dun & Bradstreet is a BBB accredited business, and then the other three, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, are all of the 3 credit reporting agencies. So make sure you check it out. And if you are the business owner and this is not something that's actually in your job description and you have an office administrator or a controller or somebody who manages these functions, put this into their job description, train them, and ask them to stay on top of this on a regular basis as often as you see fit. All right, protecting your business computers and networks. My goodness, I don't know about you guys, but when our database is down, or when our computer system is down, or when the internet is down, our business shuts down. And it is such a pain, and it really makes it impossible to do business. So knowing how important our computers are to our livelihoods, it is so crucial to make sure that you are protecting those computers and networks as much as you possibly can. When you restrict the use of business computers to business-only activities, again, we are reducing the risk that something you don't want, malware, a virus, a scammer, gets access to information they shouldn't have. And since it's so easy to expose ourselves, even the most tech-savvy people fall for these scams at some point, you need to make sure that you're keeping personal internet surfing to a minimum. You know, all of our employees, or most of our employees, have smartphones, and they have access to be able to do their personal stuff on their personal devices. So by restricting that access, it may behoove you to reduce the risk. Install and regularly update your internet security software. Technology changes so quickly, and scammers are going to do their best to be one step ahead no matter what. So having effective antivirus and anti-spyware software, it's essential to catching those really obvious viruses and things that we know about already. You want to use a program that actively scans and is frequently updated to keep up with the new threats. It may be a pain to restart your computer to do those updates every time when they're available, but in the long run, it's really worth it to avoid a huge headache of fraud. In the example I mentioned early in the presentation with Bayshore Systems, who had a major identity theft situation with their company, the virus actually was planted on the computer in 2011, and they didn't have this actual issue happen until either early this year or late last year. And so obviously the technology has changed, and it's possible that their antivirus software couldn't detect that virus at that one time. So since we know about so many more of these viruses and malwares and bots and all of those things, now you want to make sure that you're using the most up-to-date security software. BBB also recommends to install a firewall on your business computers. And a firewall, it's a software program or hardware device, and it monitors and controls all of the external connections to your business computers and or network. A firewall, it'll help you prevent unauthorized or unwanted external connections, and it's your first line of defense against intrusion attempts and malicious code attacks. So be certain to change the default administrative password when you do install one. And you know, if you're not an expert in this stuff, I got to tell you, some of this stuff is like gibberish to me if I were asked to install it myself. So make sure that you also get experts in that can help you, whether that is a friend who's really tech savvy or looking for a company to help analyze and identify maybe holes in your current data security. And finally, secure the wireless network. Encrypt your network and disable you broadcasting your service set identifier, your SSID. Most wireless devices don't come with their security features completely active. They will go through the password process and make sure that they're requesting you to do that. But if you're not tech savvy, make sure that you are using all of the instructions and that everything has a password protection on it. If you have questions, either call the manufacturer of your network or find a company, a trustworthy business who can help look at that for you. All right, knowledge is power, and I've been here for almost 4.5 years, and I'm still learning about new scams and schemes that are trying to get access to people's information. And so if you have a staff, if you have employees who have access to sensitive or personal information, or if they make autonomous decisions for your business, if they pay invoices, if they do those things, you need to make sure that they know how scams are trying to target businesses and how identity theft could really impact your business. And make sure that they're looking for those red flags, that they know what to look for. For example, I just talked to a business owner here in the Spokane area yesterday, and he had fallen for a fake invoice scam where somebody had sent him an invoice and had called him as well and told him that he owed $2,000 on a directory listing that he had not ever agreed to or wanted, and he ended up paying them the money, and he's working on trying to recover from that problem. But it isn't just the money. Even though they're trying to cash that check, when you mail a check to a wrong person, they get all of your bank account information as well. So make sure that if you do fall victim to a scam or you give up that information, that you are immediately trying to shut down that access to those accounts and information as quickly as possible. So keep your eyes and ears open for identity theft scams. And if you're not sure, if something just seems a little fishy and you're not familiar, just give BBB a call. We'll do our research on it to see if it's legitimate or seems to be a scam. Keep your eye on those business registrations and filings to make sure that they're up to date. Keep your eye on your online banking on a regular basis. Look for those small charges. Look for anything that's pending that you're not familiar with, and do your research immediately if something looks a little unknown. Tax fraud. We just had an employee here at BBB and her personal life where somebody filed her taxes to try to get their refund before they could. So if you also are if you're working on your business taxes, tax day has already passed, but if you got an extension, keep your eye on it to make sure that if you were planning to get a refund, that you get it in a timely manner. So keep your eyes open. So there's a lot of opportunities for scammers to get that personal information. So train your employees to look for those red flags and to question everything. If they cannot corroborate it with any charges with a receipt or with a vendor, make sure that they are questioning it and not paying immediately. Fraud insurance. This is an option for you to research with your individual insurance company. BBB is not an insurance agent. We're not experts in it, so I can't tell you exactly what protection you need or what you should be looking for. But look into it to see under what circumstances if they would cover your losses and what would they be covering. Maybe you can just add it onto your current business policies that you have, and it would be a nominal fee and would really help in the event of a major loss. So for example, the Sandpoint, Idaho company, they just mentioned after their multiple $70,000 and $80,000 charges, they were able to recover the $80,000 immediately, but about $50,000 were lost completely, and that they were so lucky they had fraud insurance to help cover. I mean, that would be a major hit to a small business, to any business. So make sure that you're looking into this as an opportunity if you haven't already. And your bank's fraud protection, it may not be able to cover those stolen assets. In that business's case specifically, the bank had no liability because all of the initiations and initiations of the ACHs and access from the online banking that had done the fraud, it appeared to be coming from the business themselves. And so since it had happened on the business's property and not, in Nigeria, the bank had no liability to help cover that loss. So that's where fraud insurance can come in. So make sure that you're talking to your bank, knowing what they would cover, and if this is something that you should invest in. And it always comes back around to just being alert, being cautious, keeping your eyes open, and questioning everything. And I always encourage people, don't think that you need to live under a rock here, that you don't give your information to anybody, you can't talk to strangers, but just look for those red flags and trust your instincts. If something just seems a little off, you should question it. And a legitimate business, so if it was a legitimate charge or a legitimate account that you did open or one of your employees opened or something like that, they're going to work with you and give you all the information you need. They're going to show proof of the accounts, proof of the transactions, whatever it may be. So if anybody is not giving you that information, that should also be a red flag. Possible indicators that something may have been compromised could be misaddressed business mail, if you're missing accounts, if transactions look weird, if you're getting odd phone calls or inquiries, and then also, even collections calls. If you're getting calls on defaulted accounts that you've never heard of, that is an unfortunate sign that your information may be compromised. Another odd one that you may not think about is being alert for unusual or suspicious activity around your building. If there have been a sudden increase in packages being delivered, have there been new people that are coming around that you're not familiar with, and are they delivering items that seem unusual? Do things seem out of place? Like we mentioned, identity theft doesn't only happen electronically and from scammers in the Middle East. It is also people that we know, that we've had interactions with. It could be our employees. It could be the people that work and live around us. So make sure that you're also being aware of what's happening around your company. And finally, thieves are not, although they're smart, although they are sophisticated in their technology, that does not mean that they are perfect. They often are moving so quickly that their inattention to detail could benefit you. So that's why it's so important to catch suspicious activity immediately. The longer you wait to follow up, the more damage they can possibly do. All right, so now that we know how to reduce our risk, we're watching for stuff, we're checking all of our filings, we're checking our accounts on a regular basis, but still something happens. Still your information gets compromised. What do you do? What you're going to do is you need to immediately notify your constituents and the authorities. Filing a police report is your first step, because this is showing that this is an actual fraud, this is an actual crime. Unfortunately, you can imagine there are probably some people who are claiming that their identity has been stolen when really they've just defaulted on their accounts. So filing the police report is important, and also filing with the Federal Trade Commission. And then you need to start contacting your banks and account holders and also the credit reporting agencies and let them know that there has been a compromise. This will make sure that they're watching to see if unauthorized transactions are happening or unauthorized accounts start opening, because we now know that somebody's had access to it. Alerting your customers, the media, and the public is at your discretion, but your customers is very important. Building a trustworthy relationship and having a strong reputation often comes down to communication. A recent news story was that Blue Cross and Blue Shield had a data breach earlier this year, but they didn't alert anybody until about 2 months later. And that has been concerning to the Attorney General's office because of that communication, that all of that period of time where they knew about the data breach and when consumers knew about it, they couldn't take any action. They didn't have the knowledge to put fraud alerts and to close accounts or do whatever they felt needed. So make sure you do let your customers know if it could possibly affect them. Media and the public, that does depend on the severity of your identity theft situation, but it is important to make sure the public does know and that you are transparent about the situation. And then if you have questions about what to do, how to handle your situation, you can always contact BBB. We know that fraud is not your fault, and if you do have compromised information that could affect the public, we can also report that on your BBB business review. So let us know if there's anything people should be watching out for. We can put custom text on there. When identity theft happens, it is a tense, frustrating situation, and your goal is ultimately to get back to business as soon as possible. And so what we do recommend is you need to keep all of your files, your correspondence, your notes, timelines of everything you're doing, so that if in the future you continue to have issues, that you know all of the steps that you've taken. If you've asked accounts to put a fraud alert and they agreed and maybe it didn't happen, you want to make sure that you have all of the relevant communication put in a file for future reference. You need to monitor your credit files. Putting a fraud alert on your credit report, it's asking the company, so let's say you wanted to, I'll give you a personal example. As an individual, if you had a fraud alert on your account and somebody tried to open a Macy's card with it, it would ask the Macy's representative to double, triple check the identity of the person in front of them trying to open the account. So this puts then some onus on making sure the identity of the person requesting it is actually doing it. You may also want to consider doing a credit freeze. It doesn't affect your credit score, but it makes it so that that nobody has access to the credit available to you. So as a business, this may not be an option if you are currently growing and need access to credit or a credit line or new accounts, something like that. But if you are not needing that and don't use those functions, by freezing it, it does not allow anybody unauthorized to open your credit. It does take some time to take it down, so it can't happen. You can't just go down and open a new account and get it lifted immediately. So it does take some time. But make sure that you're looking at these options, and if something happens, especially that you are freezing or putting an alert on your account. All right, so the resources that we've listed here are the best places for you to go to when it comes to identity theft. BBB can help give you some tips and steps you can take if something bad happens. The Federal Trade Commission is also a leader in identity theft steps, and they even have identity theft kits, so it gives you all of the steps and places where you can keep all of those notes and communications. And then businessidentitytheft.org. It's a great resource on a lot of extra information. So we kind of went over the big bullet points, and if there's any extra questions or research you want to do, it's a great resource as well. And then our National Small Business Ombudsman is another option as well. So that is really what it comes down to, is your business has access to a lot of money, a lot of credit, and things that are valuable to the wrong people. So keeping that information as secure as possible, reducing access to personal and identifying information is important, and then training your staff. We hire a lot of people to work with us, and we don't truly know them until they've worked with us. So making sure that you are training them, setting expectations, and also making sure that the appropriate people are using the appropriate jobs. That would be it's really helpful to you. And we so appreciate you coming to our first webinar. We hope there weren't any technical difficulties, and look forward to the next couple. I know that this year we'll touch on accredited business benefits to make sure that we are going over those and that you know what you have access to.